It is a wonderful time on television on our program Parliament and Governance on independent television. My name is Evan Sunukugi. Perhaps you may want to say that is a series on the topic today. We've had, one or two series on this topic. Talking about the 2023 Parliamentary Election, with the federal election and the State House of Assembly Parliamentary election completed. And of course, we've seen results that are coming in. It's a good one to know that from the way the results are coming in now, it's a good one to know that we may not have a one-party system in our legislature. Unlike before, that you have a situation whereby a certain political party dominates a certain House of Assembly, and of course, we're not going to have that from the way the results are coming. Anyway, we're going to be looking at the impact that the 2023 parliamentary election is going to have on the Nigerian legislature. To talk on this today, we are so privileged to have Don Etunsa Igebo.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Viewers.
All right, so let's have your insights. Give us your impression about the just completed parliamentary election. Elections now in Nigeria, except the fact that we still have one or two constituencies that are, inconclusive. So give us your impression about the elections.
Well, I think the first one with the presidential and national assembly elections was a lot better in terms of the conduct, the expectations, the turnout was better than the House of Assemblies, probably because of the movement on the obedient lovers and that processes went on board. The use of beavers was reasonably effective, and then outside the fact that there was some complaints here and there, with the Houses of Assembly, it feels like people have developed some kind of means to overrun and bypass the use of the technology, which I think is something that INEC must go back to the drawing board. However, generally, there's a lot of violence as well in this very State of Assembly election, probably because of the very nature of people who are to go to the House of Assembly, and perhaps, like you said, in those days, one-party system used to winning, and where the loyalty lies. And I think in this instance, there were some other parties like Labour Party that have a few members of the House of Assemblies, and the ruling PDP having a majority. Altogether, the experience I had from my constituency, I would say that the election was relatively peaceful, and there was a little area here and there of certain disturbances, not much, but there was an instance whereby transmission of results were inflated in most cases because it affected
We'll take that as allegation because the INEC is not here now.
On your part, these are facts and figures that I have before me, whereby the results that was gotten from the units, by the time you got to the collation center, you saw some instances where accredited votes were checked on the beavers were 25. But the results that came from there was 183. So these were physical things that I came in contact with. But obviously not for everybody who was not part of that political process. But I think in all, the first one, which is the National Assembly elections, was a lot better.
The National Parliamentary Election.
Parliamentary election. Yeah. National Parliamentary, House of Reps and Senate was a lot better than this. Except in some instances like, I headed the youth campaign in the senatorial district. Whenever we talk about electoral processes, you have INEC, you have the security personnel, you have the party members, you have the other presiding officers and other agents. The environment must be suitable for the INEC staff to stand and do certain things in the Senate. When there are some instances of, influences that you may not perceive or envisage. And sometimes if somebody is put in a position and boxed into a corner, they may do certain things, none that they may necessarily come out and say it. Even if an agent of a particular party is there and you have the numbers outnumber you, to an extent, you become part of the process, but you just be as handicapped as the INEC staff. So those things does happen. Not that it is widespread, but it does happen. Like just for example, when people go on and do ballot box snatching and destroying of ballot boxes, if you don't see it on social media and people using certain language to describe, oh, this people group came to do this, or that person's group came to do that, if you didn't say it and somebody comes here and tell you it happened, you probably will say it's an allegation too.
Okay.
So,
now let's look at another thing. Nigeria is on the bare need. Nigeria has been on the need to really change the narrative in our legislature, in the sense that we've seen situations before now that certain House of Assembly, parades a certain class of a certain political party in all the seats. But with this election now, and with the way the results are emanating, it seems that we're going to be having a different ball game. Now, what kind of impact do you think this is going to make in our legislature in Nigeria?
Well, as you know, the APC still has majority in most states. Like the APC, for instance, won 15 governorship seats, and then NPP won one in Kano.
That's the gubernatorial election.
Gubernatorial. So you can replicate that and reflect that on the houses of assemblies, where the sitting governors of a state may have influence on how it affects the houses of assemblies. Well, if I want to take Edo as a case study, you and I know what has transpired over time from the last election and how the House of Assembly was, the whole drama surrounding it till this day, before this new election. There's no doubt that this election is better than the one that probably produced these guys that came on board before now. However, that is more like coming from a manual system to a more digital system. You have to go through a process to have a different experience to now understand how to strengthen and improve on the process. However, from the questions you're asking me, whereby you have other few political parties having certain members within the constituency, ordinarily, members of House of Assembly should go there and represent their constituency. But you and I know that the way the House of Assembly operates, they become so very attached to the executive arm of government. And they now look as if most of the time they use the word like they are rubber stamp, for instance. However, if the legislature that has been voted into power now in the House of Assemblies understands their responsibility, they will go to these places and represent their constituency. However, I don't necessarily think that much is going to change in terms of the modus operandi, because as you know, it's almost like when they talk about the House of Assembly race or seats and the struggles to get in there and represent the people, people will say, well, this is the governor's fight, because somewhere attached to the issue of whether you stay or go or leave, you know, the insinuation and rumors on impeachment and whatnot. So there's a lot of influence from the executive sitting at that point in time as to what influences the outcome of the election generally. So I don't think much will change to a large extent, but I know that with the numbers, if you take Edo as a case study, if the House is probably, induction is probably done, and people are sworn in,
now,
or to be constituted, well, there could be instances of maybe debates, a bit more debates on what you think should be done that is right. And obviously not attached to political alignment as well. Because sometimes the state government will want to do things that is good because they're not on the same political path. People may want to slow down the bill. Sometimes the state government may want to do things that is not right. And the people who is within the framework of the governor's party may want to align with everything that comes from the governor, whether good or bad. The opposition parties in the House may also have to throw more light and say, well, this is not going to happen. I think that is probably going to be the only difference, depending on the final outcome of how the people who has won the elections are either allowed to sworn in or not, because it has happened before and we cannot rule that out.
Okay, so for Edo State here, we really cannot say now, because there are some constituencies, just like what we said here, that are still inconclusive as at the time of the last election that we've had. Then INEC has also not fixed a date whereby elections are going to be held into those constituencies. But from the few results that we've seen in Edo State, we noticed that it is not just, even if a certain party is believed to be on the lead now, but it's not going to be business as usual. It's not going to be a one-party system at the House. Now, you also talked about the representatives now trying to come in and do the bidding of their political parties and all that. Now, that is the greatest concern for those that they represent, because the House is a different thing. Now, what is the guarantee that even as these other political members try to do the bidding of their own political parties, at the same time, they also do the bidding of the people that they represent? Because ultimately, as it stands now, once they are members of those of the House of Assembly, there are no more politicians at work, except the fact that they represent the people. So, what is your greatest? What is the guarantee? What do you think is the guarantee that they will do the bidding of the people?
Well, for those, I've known so many House of Assembly members who understand their onion. Whether or not there's fracas within the space between the legislature and the executive arm of government, irrespective of the fears that they nurse, these guys go ahead and use their office to influence a lot of projects to their constituency. It's not like an outright fallout of what they should do. It's more of the percentage. When you put them in a scale, they would have done lesser than they expected to do. Like for example, I may say this now to an extent. It may look as if maybe it is issue to do with allegations. Whenever I make an example with anything, I know that sometimes when people are not here to also speak for themselves, because of the rules guiding TV and radio, it may be unfair on them because they don't have a chance to defend themselves. Like in my state's constituency where I contested in 2019 and the brother that represented us, you can almost go there and see for yourself how limited or very little that was done in those areas.
In terms of what?
In terms of infrastructure. But when you look at other House of Assembly members in the same state, the people would have attracted more projects.
Why do you think that happened that way?
I think that is probably down to the understanding or the wherewithal, the know-how of the mindset of the member representing the constituency. Some of them go there with the intention of wanting to probably get back what they put in, or maybe just feel it's a way to get rich, maybe. And some people get there where they look at the future and say, well, I'll do my bit to make sure that I do enough to reference when I'm looking to contest again. And that depends on the different level of exposure and understanding of their people as well. Because don't forget, a lot of these guys will look at their people and how exposed-minded they are. They will use that to determine how they corner their way around things. Most of the time, to be fair to the House of Assembly members also, they're also caught in the mix, having to do the bidding of their paymaster, if you put it that way. Because the House of Assemblies has voted against the autonomy. This very house ending now. They voted against the autonomy. People from there has moved on. Some of them has won elections to the House of Reps. Some of them are so aspiring to go to the House of Reps. If the way that they've gone to the legislature was never right, and the processes that bring them on board have an undertone of who is backing them, your guess is as good as mine what you think would happen when they get back to the office. Because
so it's
they've not really learned anything new. It's just a case of progressing from one place to the other, because on their own, they've not had nothing bother them or shake them or make them feel uncomfortable in the first instance of how they came in. And now if they've acquired some goodwill and they want to push further, there's still that goodwill from those people, still dealing with the same people.
At the end of the day, is it going to look like that the electorates made the biggest mistake of their life?
Not really. If the electorates are a bit more aware, they can engage with their House of Assembly members more. They can always be, request to hold meetings with him and demand answers from him. And if you have anything in your locality that you want them to know about, irrespective of how the wind has blown them, depending on the happenings within the executive arm of government or what the legislature is all about, you can help them channel their energy into wanting to, even if it is to beg for something for their people, which is something they can refer to another day. But you also need to understand that we as black people and Nigerians, we have a particular mindset. A lot of the people that are in those systems, not all of them are not doing well. There are some places where the Houses of Assemblies are doing exceptionally well. But in some few cases, you have more challenges. Probably because they feel, like I said, they don't know what's happening. So we'll just do whatever we first want to do, give them a little bit. And then for those who are the voters, who understands that they have a representative there, they should not shy away from engaging them. But most time, when they vote them in, they just back out. And they let the legislature dictate.
All right. A while ago, you talked about the issue of constituency projects now, which is still very controversial. Now, we've heard whereby some people say that it is not constitutional. It is not the duty of House members to fight for constituency projects and all that, because some chief executives have even gone ahead to let the House members know that, look, hey, this thing is not constitutional. Now, what would you want to say about that? That's one question on one side. Then another question is that, just like what we said, that from the look of things now, we may likely have a very controversial houses of assembly, across the nation, because it is not business as usual. It's not a one-party system from the way the results, are coming in. It's not going to be a one-party system. So if we're going to have a very controversial, parliament at the state level, don't you think it's going to be at the expense of the people?
Before I answer that question, the first question you asked me...
is on constituency projects.
What is constitutional? Well,
constituency projects.
Yes, anything that can help the people grow, whether constitutional or not, whether on paper or not, I think we should let it fly, because you know why? Rules are meant to be made and broken. Whatever that is constitutional was put on a white paper and debated by people, passed first and second reading.
What are the duties of the legislators?
So I'm saying, let me just lie. People find reasons in it to now put them in and become a law, a constitution. Then some executive government can come and say, well, this is not constitutional. But at the same time, you can't be jack of all trade. You know, if you look at how constitutional project has worked with the Houses of Assemblies over time, it has helped the House of Assembly members directly put projects into different communities. Whether or not the means at which is done and the process needs to be upgraded, that is a different ballgame. I don't think there's anything wrong with allowing the House of Assembly members to do constituency project, because it helps. These are the people representing the constituency. You may be caught up in the center having to deal with more pressing issues. These people in these areas within the constituency can be neglected because you made the House of Assembly member just a purely rubber stamp. Look at the Federal House of Reps, good or bad, they still have a lot of constituency projects.
Yeah, it's still the same thing.
They should allow them,
in the state
to do so, because if what they do in most cases can impact the life of the people, whether it's constitutional or not, shouldn't be an issue. Because there's so many constitutional issues that the legislature themselves does not put into consideration and implement in the lives of the people, because there are ways of dealing with constitutional issues because unconstitutional. Because they are the one at the center of power doesn't necessarily make it right or wrong. So I think Houses of Assembly members getting constituency projects directly impacting on the lives of the people through the demands. If they need this here, they need that here, if they need schools, if they need that, and you put it and debate and put it into the budget, indirectly the people will get what they wish for. But if they go back and tell the state government on how these things are done, the people in the constituency may not be able to reach out to the state government. And if the state government does not deploy and implement that project, the constituency rep becomes start having problems with these people. So I don't necessarily think, even if it's not constitutional, that it is a problem that such is allowed to exist. And on the other question, which you mentioned,
borders on from what people say, that most houses of assembly we may have controversial situations there because members are not emanating from
the issue of controversy is I can say is an opinion thing. You in the norm, you assume that this is supposed to be controversial because there are people from other political parties. But remember, by the time they get in there, they have to work together as legislators. Whenever anything is going wrong, whether rightly or wrongly, they all be in the know. They all will discuss it and throw in their own views and ideas on the direction that they think they should follow.
Well, don't you think we're looking at a situation where we're going to have controversial manifestos now?
Don't be surprised.
These are politicians from various
political and those politicians in different political backgrounds, where there will not be controversy. Where I'm trying to make you understand is this: a lot of the people that contested under, for example, Labour Party, that has gotten some few members into the House, majority of them came from APC and PDP. They just went on the vehicle to contest. That is what we're trying to talk about.
Some of the people, some of the contestants that contested under the APC, some of them came from the PDP.
So by the time they get there, you realize that they just changed the vehicle as a way of getting the people not to understand why they need to come in through this platform. But at the same time, they are going there to do the bidding of the very people at the center. For example, somebody that won in I think it's under Labour Party. It was the chief of staff to the former.
I know, let us not wait, but for the fact that he has changed political parties, so let's leave it.
So sometimes it's very difficult for people to push their manifesto because manifestos are not pushed by individuals. Remember, there are majority voices in the House, and there are also minority voices in the House. So if you're in the minority voices, their votes here will always undermine your votes. And if you're not careful, your manifesto goes nowhere. At some point, you may want to find a way around it. So that way, they may see it as a compromise. So it's an easy thing that is easier said than done. It's not just that easy.
Okay, there are so many things as far as the Nigerian legislature is concerned now. For at the national level, we're going to be having this year, by the time the Parliament is fully inaugurated, we're going to be having the 10th Assembly. And of course, at state level, take for example Edo State, we're going to be having the 8th Assembly. Now, so many bills were passed into law, and so many of these laws, some people say that they have to take them back, let them look at them one more time so that the laws will be all inclusive. Take, for example, in the Edo State House of Assembly, we saw the open grazing bill in Edo State now. So that bill has been passed into law, but a lot of persons are not comfortable because they were not necessarily part of how that bill was, generated. Would you want to say that when this 8th Assembly comes on board, that they should perhaps recall the bill, recall the law now into bill and to discuss it one more time?
Well, the truth of the matter is that the job of a legislator is not something that you just go into the house and hit the ground running one time. It's something that requires experience to a very large extent, because a lawmaker is different from somebody in an executive arm of government. As a lawmaker, it involves a lot of lobbying. First-timers that are going there, are they the ones that will now go about wanting to recall a bill that has been passed into law to be discussed back as a bill? Because depending on the kind of the constituency where it comes from, if it's coming from a regular federal constituency where the issue of open grazing does not affect him, that will not become his priority when he gets there. You see, these are some of these things that is hidden like a claws of a lion that you don't see. So by the time you go there, you want to push the issue of open grazing law so much. And the man in the rural area where the grazing is affecting may be having a problem of basic rural water supply. There's already a clash of interest. Because when the man in the urban area is pushing things that will help him achieve his aims, I don't think his major interest will be on what's affecting people in the rural area. You see what I'm saying? These are some of the things that people don't think about. And for first-timers, believe it or not, it will be very difficult for them to push for some bills, because most of them, they say when you're man enough to do the crime, you should be man enough to face the time. When you don't see it in football, don't play it. When people don't get to see these sort of things happens and affect
now, when you say first timers now, but most of them they won their seats. So are you saying that the electorate didn't see the leadership characteristics in them? You
see, before the open grazing law was passed, like I said to you, the 9th Assembly was marred with controversy in our own view, not for the people who are in government, who felt that they needed to do what they had to do based on the circumstance. However, for people who are new, like the Labour Party members or maybe some other members who have gone into legislation, it will take them time to know how to negotiate, either with the executive or whatever, because whatever that's transpired before, executive have 90% influence on the outcome of what led to the open grazing bill. So the common man on the streets and the people in the local government in the different constituencies does not understand those things. So if they are not engaged with it in a certain way, even when you tell them, most times, it's like you're talking to a dead horse, because they don't understand the difference between what the open grazing is and how it affects them. As far as they're concerned, it is the man at the center who has allowed the grazing stuff to happen in the states. They don't believe that the state has any role to play. So to them, the man in the rural area will be throwing their mat at Mr. President, Muhammad Buhari, not knowing that the state government and the legislature here are the ones who actually allowed such to exist within this.
Anyway, that's all time we take today on the program Parliament and Governance on independent television. And we just have to keep calm for the constituencies that are rendered inconclusive in Edo State and in some other states. We just need to let you know that we need to keep calm. INEC is going to let us know so that we can come out again. And, maybe INEC will have a way of settling the whole thing, whether to order a re-election or do a cancellation or maybe find a soft landing so that we can have results from those constituencies. So that we'll be through with the parliamentary elections, the federal parliamentary election, and of course the state House of Assembly election, so that we can be ready to inaugurate State House of Assemblies and of course the national parliament at the national level. I want to say a very big thank you to you, Don Etunsa Igebo, for finding time to come on the program today.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, so until the same time on the program Parliament and Governance on independent television, Benin City. My name is Evan Sunuku.